Smaulgld.
Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Silver Thursday, Wednesday, the 27th of March 2019. We're going to cover Silver Thursday, but tonight's topic is Palladium pounded and pummeled on Silver Thursday. We're going to take a look at the markets. A pretty uneventful day in the markets, at least the gold and silver markets, but Palladium did indeed take a beating. Let's get right into the markets, and then we've got some stories for you and some analysis about analysis and pumping and narratives and so on. So let's get right to it and take a look at the gold and silver prices and the equity market. So Dow Jones was down only 32 points, which is really a 0.13% decrease, but it's still under 26,000, so it's down to 25,625. Nasdaq took a bigger hit, down 0.63%. I think it was down about 50 points, down to 76.43. And our S&P 500 was down 13 points, or about 0.5% as well. And now the S&P is still clinging to that 2,800 handle, and the dollar index was up almost to 97. That was up 0.22%. All right, let's take a look now at the gold and silver prices. Gold was down today, as was silver, and gold was down less than silver. You're going to see what happens to that unsustainable gold-silver ratio. It's probably unsustainable at 80. It looks like it's headed to 90. Gold price today, last close at 1308, fell down about $7. Still holding above 1300, and it's about $1,309 at the present time. Silver, so that was about 0.5% loss on the day for gold. Not a significant loss. Silver was down a little bit more, down 1%. It doesn't take much to get a percentage loss in silver. You just got to go down 15, 16 cents. That's what happened today. Closed at 15.26, and that's where it is right now. And what did it do for the unsustainable gold-silver ratio? The ones that all those, quote, analysts, silver analysts, aka pumpers, have been telling you that the gold-silver ratio is unsustainable, and they don't want to hear any other reason other than the fact that they insist it has to be 16 to 1, 15 to 1, 9 to 1, because silver is rarer than gold, and silver is so useful in our lives. And silver comes out of the ground at only 9 to 1, and therefore it should be 9 to 1. Maybe it should be 1 to 1. Okay. We're going to get into this a little later on in the program. That's not analysis. That's just pushing a narrative. And that's very important if you are a silver miner or you are a silver pumper. And it's important just to push that. JP Morgan has X 100 million ounces of silver. And that is why you are going to buy silver. Again, no analysis. This is very, very similar to what we saw MSNBC, CNBC talking about Russian collusion. Never ever saying, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Mueller's going to give you the evidence, and that's all you need to know. Just like JP Morgan has all this silver, that is all you need to know. That's why you come here, because I don't tell you all you need to know. I try to give you as much information and analysis in order for you to figure out, perhaps. No one ever figures anything out totally, but you get a better handle on what might be happening than just tuning in and hearing what you want to hear. Well, gold-silver ratio. I've been talking about this for years. They've all been saying it's unsustainable, has to come down, relative rarity. Never, ever, ever thinking, why is it going higher? Well, that is simple. It is manipulation. They manipulate gold too. And no one ever wants to hear anything other than the narrative that the gold-silver ratio is unsustainable and you're going to get rich because silver's set to skyrocket. And once the world figures out, after 10 years of pumping the same story, the world's going to figure it out. Better to be 10 years early than a day late. And that passes as wisdom. Okay, better to be 100 years early than a day late. The gold-silver ratio now at 85.78. And I take no pleasure in the gold-silver ratio going higher, except it doesn't shock me that it has gone higher because as those of you who have been listening to this channel, I've done many YouTubes. I've spoken to Silver Fortune about this. I spoke to SGT Report about this and explained why possibly the gold-silver ratio has gone higher. And if you are married to a narrative, you don't want to hear it. Well, there it is. You maybe not want to see it, but it's 85.782 But he's a shill. He's a disinformation agent. I think it's the exact opposite. Okay. That's it for gold and silver prices. Let's look at, this is an interesting story. But before we do that, I sorry. We started the show saying it was Silver Thursday, but it's Wednesday. Well, yes, indeedy do. It is Silver Thursday. I've never said that before. Yes, indeedy do. I don't think I'll ever say that again. That's worse than whoops-a-daisy. Okay, Silver Thursday, March 27th, 1980. What happened on that day? That was the day the Hunt brothers went bust in their grand scheme to buy as much silver as they could. There's one flaw in their scheme. They bought COMEX futures contracts, and they bought them on margin. Price of silver fell, and then COMEX went in for the coup de grace and said, okay, from now on, no more buying of silver. You can only sell silver on the COMEX. Guess what happens when you can only sell silver on the COMEX? The price goes down. And if part of your margin is based on the value of the silver that you're holding, and the value of that hoard goes down, well, now you don't have enough margin to meet the margin requirements for COMEX. So COMEX basically took down the Hunt brothers that day on Silver Thursday. The price went down, down, down. The price had risen from about single digits in 1979 to over $25. By 1980, $50 was in sight. It had passed $40 pretty quickly. And then on January 7th, they increased the margin requirements on COMEX, but didn't stop the price from rising. And then it was January 21st, 1980, COMEX limited trading in silver to liquidation orders only. And it was just a matter of time until on March 27th, Thursday, Silver Thursday, the price of silver fell further, and the Hunt brothers were hit with a margin call of over $100 million they could not meet, and the price plunged. Had already been plunging. They've been meeting their margin calls from 50 to 16, and that day it went from 16 down to $10 an ounce, and the Hunt brothers went bust that day. And as you know, the price of silver didn't approach $50 an ounce until 31 years later in 2011. So a little piece of history there. Silver Thursday, March 27th, 1980. And today is Wednesday, March 27th, 2019, 39 years later. And we're still not near that $50 mark. All right. Other gold story, Congo gold mines and Ebola. Nasty disease in Africa. Third of the gold mines exposed. There's also in that Congo region cobalt. So there could be disruptions in those supplies. Now, Congo, the world doesn't rely on Congo's gold production in any way, shape, or form. They can close all the mines down there tomorrow, and you probably wouldn't have an impact on the price. However, cobalt is in, I think it's 60% of the world's cobalt is in the Congo. All right. Now, on the crypto side, let's take a look what's going on over there. A bit of a rally across the board with most cryptos. I'm still looking at, I've been giving you guys the prices from Coinbase. I'm not sure that's the best thing to do. But let's stay consistent with that. Bitcoin over $4,000 at $4,028, up 2.5%. Ethereum, as Seamus would call it, Ethereum is at $139. That is up 4.5%. Litecoin at $61.32, up 5.32%. And Bitcoin Cash at 172.44. I mentioned I'd probably start covering some of the other cryptos. I think EOS, just somewhat of an Ethereum-based token, that is up 15.65% today. XRP, which is Ripple, that is up 2.6% today to 31 cents. Cardano is up nearly 10% at 6.7 cents. And Monero is up 3%. Basic Attention Token up 5%. What else is of interest here? I think Stellar is of interest to people, up 4.4%, up to nearly about 11 cents. All right. What other story? Speaking of Stellar, I saw this last night. Coinbase to give away over 100 million in XLM to users who study it. And on the site, they have, you can watch these videos and sign up, and they're going to give you $50 worth of XML. I know that Ripple had done something very similar to this. I guess, I don't know if you call this an airdrop, but it looks like they're prepared to give and put into your account $50 worth of XML. And I think they have other tutorials on other coins too. A little strange, I think, for Coinbase to it's almost like a drug dealer seeding you with your first hit of a certain coin, but that's what it appears like they're doing. And don't look a gift horse in the mouth. What else? Pantera Capital. There's news today that I think this is their third venture fund. They invest in companies like Bakkt, Abra, Bitstamp, Brave, which is that BAT token company, ErisX, which is the Fidelity Ameritrade platform. So they're heavily involved in platforms. They also have a crypto fund where they invest in cryptocurrencies. The reason I mention this is $175 million, and there seems to be no slowing of investment into the crypto space despite the price of cryptos being down anywhere between 80 and 95% over the last year, although they are rebounding somewhat. Just a point, this is not a narrative I'm pumping, this is just an observation. A lot of people are talking about how millennials are not buying stocks. A lot of people have talked about how markets will be impacted by retiring boomers. They've bought houses, especially some of them larger houses, that millennials don't seem to be interested in buying. As boomers retire, they're going to be cashing out their stocks. Then there's concern who's going to buy those stocks. And we have seen, read online, anecdotal evidence that certain items like antique furniture, it's very easy to buy now if you're interested in that kind of thing. It's cheap because boomers sell it and no one really wants it. And I actually think the reason millennials don't want a lot of these things, stocks and houses and antique furniture and so on, partially is generational. They're more interested in digital assets. That makes total sense. But also, they don't have the means to buy this kind of stuff. I think the reason they don't buy houses is because they can't. Now, they are used to renting a lot of things, renting their music, not necessarily holding tangible assets, renting their videos, having a car, going on Uber, whatever it is, Lyft, those types of services. So that makes sense. Some of it is generational just because they've grown up in a non-tactile world in many respects. They don't even have CDs. They certainly don't have LPs unless they're aficionados and they somehow think the LP sounds better than the digital download, which it does, but that's a different case. I think eventually millennials may, if they're going to invest at all, they'll be investing small amounts on things like Square, cryptocurrencies. And if they make their money there, if somehow they do, I think they eventually will buy houses and stocks. And that's one of the reasons and one of my thesis that Wall Street wants, not to help millennials, but in general, wants this crypto bubble again, because it is a way of reflating asset values. It's very hard to get people to buy stocks that don't have money. It's very hard to keep housing prices high. No matter how low you lower the interest rates, people don't have the income or they don't have the capital. They can't buy the houses. So I think one way of doing it is to push this crypto bubble. Again, it's my theory. It's not a narrative I'm pushing. It's just something that I'm paying attention to and that I observe. All right. I think that's it on cryptos. What other stories do we have today? Brexit. Theresa May, she says she's going to go after Brexit is in train. Who knows if that's even going to happen. And then we also had 2020. Bill Weld, he used to be the governor of Massachusetts. He's a Trump hater. He says he's going to run for president. I don't know what damage he thinks he's going to do. 93% of Republicans like Trump. This guy, Bill Weld, ran as a libertarian last campaign election, so I'm sure he's not got a big Republican base. But I did a poll. I asked the question on Twitter, Republican Bill Weld on his plans to stop insecure bully Donald Trump from making it to the 2020 general election, as reported in Newsweek. And I asked in the Republican primary, Bill Weld will get 0 to 5% of the vote, 5% of the vote, 10% of the vote, or 20% of the vote plus. And everyone said less than 5% of the vote. I would have to have voted that way myself. And remember, a primary challenge is only effective if you take it to the end. And I actually believe that when there's a primary challenge and a candidate doesn't come out as a clear winner, that candidate generally loses. Bernie Sanders' challenge to Hillary Clinton definitely damaged her. If she just got the nomination straight up, she would have had a better shot. If you go back in history, you see this all the time. Ted Kennedy challenging Jimmy Carter in 1980, right down to the wire. Carter lost. If you go through, let's see what other periods of time we've had this. 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012. I don't have them off the top of my head, but it happens all the time. Oh, I got a couple. Oh, I'm sorry. 1976, Reagan challenges Ford, and Ford loses. Again, I think if Ford had a clear shot and wasn't challenged and didn't pardon Nixon, then he probably would have taken it in 1976 against the surging Jimmy Carter. All right, let's move on from that. And what else do we have tonight? Brexit 2020, cryptos, gold, silver. Janet Yellen gives a chance to listen to Janet. She says, I'm not a fan of MMT. Yes, she's not a fan of NMT, and that its proponents are confused, and that I don't understand what she's talking about. MMT, I'm confused. Seems to be what the Fed would like. It's just a matter of printing up a lot of money and not worrying about deficits, but they like to appear that they're prudent. They don't agree with that stuff. Here's a very important story about oil. Now, I've been talking for 4 or 5 years about why the petrodollar is not important as much as it used to be, and even if it is still important, it's not going anywhere. And my argument there is, again, this is one that people just want to hear the narrative. Petrodollar is going to collapse. It's going to be game over for the dollar, and China is going to crush the dollar, and the petro yuan, and then the gold back yuan. All these stories, right? And the way I always looked at it was that the petrodollar, or the Saudis' backing of the dollar through pricing their oil through only by pricing it in dollars and only accepting dollars for the oil, is not what gives the dollar its underpinning anymore, its sole underpinning. That was what it was intended to do when the U.S. went off the gold standard, when Nixon said you can no longer bring your dollars, central banks can no longer bring their dollars to the U.S. treasuries and get gold for them. And then Europeans were saying, well, then why do we need to hold dollars? You might as well just hold anything else. And that's when they came up with the petrodollar agreement, which created an incentive for Europeans who were relying on Saudi oil to hold dollars so they can buy oil. But ever since then, the dollar's held for far more reasons other than just to buy oil. Now, the reason the petrodollar, end of the petrodollar theory, is very faulty is because the United States still has good relations with Saudi Arabia. In fact, they're better since Trump became president because he squashed the Iran deal, and Iran is big enemies with Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is very happy with the United States right now. Saudi Arabia was very happy that the United States turned a blind eye to the Khashoggi murder. But even besides that, even if Saudi Arabia decided, well, we're going to sell half of our oil in Chinese yuan or Japanese yen, whatever it is, it still would not be end of the dollar. However, that relationship is still strong. There is no gold-backed petro yawn, but the United States has also emerged, as I have been saying for 4 years, will emerge as a major oil producer and major oil exporter due to shale. And that has happened. The United States has now become the largest oil exporter and the largest oil producer in the world. Now, some people say that that's built on grains of sand, and that could be. I mean, shale is a technology. It's based on a lot of debt that you have to take on. The pricing of it is the success of these companies depends on a higher price. But now there's a bit of a crack in the shale boom. It isn't all guns and roses. It says that infected U.S. shale is being turned away by Asian buyers. And this is a story about South Koreans turning away a couple of tankers. Apparently, the way they refine the shale oil, it actually creates an issue with impurities. And I think also the grade of the shale is different than other oils. So it's not all one way that the United States is now the world's largest oil producer, oil exporter. But it does highlight, though, that, and this I'm sure can be fixed, but they say is a function of how they have to put it through the different pipelines and refineries. I don't know the technical details on why this oil has impurities, what they call it, infected shale oil, but it's definitely something that's got to be sorted out. All right, what else now? What this guy got? I think we're almost ready for Palladium. Okay, but I do want to talk about last night. No, not that, but it says here we had a discussion last night, and I think it was something Fiona said, and it was a very interesting insight. And they were talking about Rachel, I think they called her Mad Cow, but Maddow. And she says, I'm shocked that Rachel Maddow is so popular. You can see with the naked eye she is deranged. Now, I don't know about that, but, and I mentioned last night that it's not that she's popular, it's that what she is promoting is popular, and she was patient A for trashing Trump and saying Russian collusion, and person who was out there, seen is out there trying to take him down. She had his tax returns, and she was going to show he didn't pay taxes, and then, oops, the tax returns that somehow she got showed he paid more taxes than all the other presidential candidates, at least in that year. But interesting thing that happened about with Rachel Maddow, to prove the point we were making last night, was she's not popular the last couple of days. Well, why is that? Because what she was promoting turned out not to be true, which means she's going to need another pump. And this is exactly the point. I'm not trying to stray into the political arena here, but this is exactly my point about media and exactly my point about the pumpers. Think in your mind, I don't have to name any names. How many of your favorite gold and silver pumpers or crypto pumpers have moved seamlessly from pumping silver to gold, or from gold to silver, or from silver to cryptos, and then from cryptos back to silver? It's because their audience is there not because they like the analysis, it's because they're there for the pump. I know for a fact that my analysis is generally better than the pumper channels, but people want to hear the pump. Just like I don't think Rachel Maddow is some amazing presenter, amazing journalist, but they were there because they wanted to hear the narrative. And when she doesn't have the goods, they turn away. This is from the Daily Beast. MSNBC, Trump Russia ratings fizzle. Time to pivot to 2020. Now, 2020 is not very exciting. What is 2020? Well, that's analysis on the 12, 15 Democrat candidates running against Trump. So you have to have some type of pump, how Trump's going down in 2020. I mean, you have to do something like that. So a lot of media is cheerleading. They have to now start cheerleading a candidate who's the best, why Trump is bad. And that's exactly what you see in the gold and silver. We've seen the pumping go from one asset to the other. And then again, that's not analysis. You're going to have new turn dates or a new Shemitah or new... It's not analysis. It's dressed up as analysis. Phony narratives about J.P. Morgan or whatever it is. And you have to come up with new ones, or you can rehash old ones. COMEX default, Petro yuan, gold back yuan, silver shortage. That is what most of what passes as analysis is. In politics, in gold, in silver, it's not analysis. And it shows that people don't want analysis. They want to get behind a cause. Cue my mom, same thing. They'll show you he's going to trust the plan, and you get out there and it's all going to happen. It's all based on emotion. It's not analysis. Q doesn't do analysis. He drops breadcrumbs, and then people interpret what Q says as analysis. And people think, wow, now we know what's going to happen. Trust the plan. No different than Russia-Trump collusion. No one's willing to look at what is actually happening. And these are journalists. It's very easy. And I'm going to do tomorrow night. We're going to take a look at the Papadopoulos testimony. I said, what's the Papadopoulos testimony? Well, you could be excused for not knowing what it is. You're not a journalist. But this guy right here, Doug Collins, most people don't even know who he is. He is a ranking member, and he, in the Congress, and he has been releasing transcripts and interviews of people like Bruce Orr, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, and most recently, Papadopoulos. Now, in these transcripts, they're very long. Everybody's saying we have to see the report. The reason that people want to see the Mueller report is they want to go through it and find what they're looking for. They don't want to go through it to analyze it. They want to find something that says, see, this means Trump did something wrong. What's interesting here, everybody's with trust the plan and release the documents, declassify the documents. There's plenty of stuff in these documents right here. And I don't see journalists tumbling over themselves to try to find out what's in these documents. All they'll do is somebody will read through them and find something, and then they'll use that as a headline. But only if it helps the Trump was framed narrative will they show it. And if you are pushing the narrative that Trump is bad and he's colluded with Russia, you don't want to. You have no incentive to look at documents that may show he was set up. And there's plenty of information. Now, if you're a real journalist, you want to see what really happened. And then maybe you can create a narrative and use all this information to support your narrative. But that's not what they do. None of this information has made its way into the hands of MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times. They don't cover this. So tomorrow we're going to take a look at the very interesting story of this gentleman named George Papadopoulos, who was a 31-year-old at the time, and he was trying to make a name for himself as a foreign policy advisor, and he thought, I'll take a flyer, maybe I can get in on the Trump campaign. It's probably the type of campaign at the time no one thought he could win, that maybe they'll give me a shot. And he became the center of what appears to be some very shady dealings that look like it might have the fingerprints of the FBI in a setup. It is a fascinating read, but it's 239 pages. I'm mostly through it. So tomorrow we're going to go through that. And again, it's analysis. It's not definitive, but the point being is this has been ignored. These transcripts have been ignored because they do not, they in no way, shape, or form promote the narrative that Trump colluded with Russia. In fact, in many respects, when you see what we go through tomorrow, this guy, George Papadopoulos, rebuffed many advances. People saying they had dirt on Russia. There was some intrigue with some woman. They introduced him to a very, very beautiful Russian woman who's supposedly Putin's niece, who could barely speak English, but then a week later, she's texting him and writing him in perfect English. Very intriguing story. And again, if you're a real journalist, this is the kind of stuff that you want to report on. But that's not what we see. So if you want analysis, I'll give you analysis. How does that sound? It's just the same with the gold back yuan. I pointed this out to Mike Baloney. I pointed this out to everyone in the gold community that there was no gold back yuan. And they all kept saying, but it's in the Asian Nikkei review. And I said, where's the source for it other than other gold pumpers being cited? And they're saying this is a great thing. Again, it's all about narrative pushing, narrative pumping. And the reason they do it, either they're lazy, they believe it, they want to believe it, and or they know that their audience will eat it up. And it becomes an economic issue. Remember, you don't win audience by dashing people's dreams. Now, I actually think it's a disservice, and you can see it. People turn on the pumpers when they find out that the pump is false. And what you're seeing right now, they're still clinging to the Russian collusion because they don't have the next pump ready. They don't have the next narrative ready. This is what they place their hopes on. Now, a good pumper or a good narrative promoter will have the next one ready. So when the COMEX doesn't default, gold back yuan is right there for them. When the gold back yuan doesn't happen, Basel III is right there for them. Silver's not doing well. Well, there's this thing called Litecoin, and Litecoin is the right coin. And then when that's not working out too well, back to silver. This is what they do. They need to promote, and it's not analysis, it's pumping. And unfortunately, the viewers actually take it as analysis. It's not. Okay, enough of that. Was there anything else on this? Yeah, Comey apparently is confused. It's funny. Comey is confused. Now, here's the guy who leaked his transcript, private notes that he took when he met with the president to his friend for the explicit purpose, according to his congressional testimony, which I saw, to give to the New York Times, leaked for the purpose of getting a special counsel appointed. Now, that's his job. He gets fired and decides we need a special counsel because I got fired. Now, this is all part of a much bigger plan. At least that's my opinion based on a lot of the documents that I've looked at. Now, you never hear this on MSNBC. They never talk about how it's possible that this was all a setup. They say things like, you can't disprove that the Steele dossier has been disproved. I'm not even going to get into why that's a moronic statement. All right. What else do we have before we move into Palladium getting pummeled? Oh, it was a nice point by CoinsAZ. Fiona Whalen, he said, that and so much more that the general public deems acceptable as proof they have a nation full of extremely gullible sheep who don't question their presuppositions. And again, you tune in every night to hear what you want to hear. And remember, the person pushing the narrative has no incentive to tell you something. They withhold facts to tell you something that doesn't meet their narrative. Now, I'll give you an example. I did it tonight, but I didn't. Here's what I mean. I didn't push a narrative about the new petrodollar backed by U.S. oil. I pushed the concept that this idea that the petrodollar was going to collapse and that meant the dollar was going to collapse wasn't necessarily true. I'm not going to repeat what I just said 10 minutes ago about why the petrodollar is not the underpinning for the dollar. But then I raised in also the fact that the U.S. dollar is going to be required because the U.S. is a major oil exporter. It will become a major oil exporter and a major oil producer. And it's become the world's largest producer and oil exporter. And therefore, countries need dollars to buy oil from the United States. That wasn't a narrative. That was an analysis of what I saw based on trying to analyze the petrodollar. I didn't just say petrodollar is going to collapse. That is all I need to know. And therefore, I'm going to buy gold and silver because the dollar is going to collapse because the petrodollar is toast. And how many times have you heard that stupid story? Okay. Now, I'm not married to my analysis because that wasn't a narrative that I wanted to happen, had any financial benefit in happening. It was just what I saw happening. Now, when I see facts like, well, there's a crack in the shale oil story. Now, I've always known there's a crack in the shale oil story, that a lot of it is debt-based, and people have been saying it's going to end, and they're going to collapse, and that the shale oil wells only last a certain period of time. I was aware of that, but I also said they're finding more areas of fields that they can do this to, so I was less concerned about that. But this issue with the shale oil impurities hurts. And it's not a narrative, it just hurts the concept that the United States has already become the #1 oil producer and oil exporter. So whatever analysis I did that was projective turned out to be correct. I didn't foresee this particular thing happening, but now I can add it to my analysis. And if it turns out that the whole thing crumbles, well, then there's new analysis to be had. I didn't stake my... People don't turn in every night to hear me pump the idea that the United States is producing the new petrodollar backed by U.S. oil and listen to me every night to talk about it. That's not my narrative. That was just one of my pieces of analysis. So, and of course, it can be attacked, it can be challenged, and I have no personal interest in defending any analysis I do if it turns out to be that there's facts I've overlooked, or there's things that subsequently interfered, subsequent events that have happened. That's all part of the analysis. So that's what I do. I do the analysis. I don't keep clinging to a point of view just because I know that attracts viewers, because it doesn't work that way. All right, let's take a look at Palladium. Palladium. A smash down, 6% drop. And they're concerned it is a bubble. Yes, indeed. Now, Palladium, to me, has been quite shocking. Let's take a look at the chart of Palladium. It has just gone mad, but I'll give you some background on Palladium, and then it'll make a bit more sense. Well, here's the 1 month chart. It includes today. Now, Nick does his charts, I don't know why, in grams, but you can see today falling off a cliff there. Off a cliff high or a valley low. Here's the 5-year chart on Palladium. That's a pretty prodigious climb there. I mean, that's wow. I mean, Palladium was the cheapest of the precious metals other than silver. It was always platinum, then gold, and far much belower than palladium. But then platinum, Palladium was usually less than half. It's about 40% of the price of platinum. And of course, silver has always been the lowest, trading closer to the base metals like copper and nickel. But Palladium took off, and Palladium is still, even after today, I believe, is still the most expensive precious metal. Yeah, it's at $14.24 right now an ounce. Gold is at $13.09. Platinum is $8.53, and silver at $15.26. Now, what happened today? Well, you get your armchair Palladium analysts who don't ever cover Palladium. They just happen to see the price drop, so they got to weigh in. They got to give a reason. And it was the largest one-day drop in 19 years. It was $100. I mean, I remember when Palladium was like $300. So if it dropped $100, that would be like a 33% drop. And they were saying that concerns of a bubble. Yeah, okay, I don't know if that's quite what it is, but there are some issues with Palladium. We're going to take a look at, the price is determined from the trading on your COMEX, and not much Palladium in the NYMEX stockpiles. It looks like there's 42,583 ounces. Not a lot of Palladium. Now, Palladium is a relatively new metal discovered in 1803. And it was discovered when he was purifying platinum. Figure that one out. And Russia is the largest producer of palladium, which is already an issue because they're under sanctions and they're outside of the Western trading. And it is a necessary element for many products. And there's one company, just one company in Russia that accounts for 40% of the world's annual production. I think it's called Norilsk Nickel. And it's used for half of Palladium's uses for catalytic converters, and now they're saying we're concerned about a global slowdown, and therefore that's what happened. All happens like in 18 minutes in one day. Everyone all of a sudden says, oh, yeah, we're going to have a global slowdown. We might as well all sell our palladium. I don't think that's how it works. But that is one of the reasons for the rise in the price, is that there's not a lot of it, and Russia produces the bulk of it, and one company produces almost half of the palladium that's out there. Now, palladium has, unlike platinum, has no jewelry use, so it's not like there's been a big Russian demand for palladium jewelry. Sometimes there is some platinum demand. There's a decent platinum jewelry demand. And palladium is used in electronics, dentistry, medical devices, and some water purification systems. But it has no monetary, absolutely no monetary value. Although recently, the Canadian Mint and the U.S. Mint have issued palladium coins. I don't know why they did that, but they did that in the last couple of years. Platinum coins have been issued by the U.S. Mint and the Canadian Mint for some time, not in large quantities, but they aren't new to minting platinum. Platinum also does have a limited monetary history. Platinum was discovered in Russia, and when they found the platinum, they started to make it into coins. Now, it hasn't been around that much. I think that platinum was found in, they found platinum first in South America around 1735, but then they discovered it about 100 years later, about 1825, in the Ural Mountains of Russia. So you're talking, it's a relatively new metal on the scene, and then the Emperor Nicholas had these platinum coins minted. And I've seen pictures of them online from like 1830, 1840, but they're limited in issuance. I think Russia's the only country to ever issue platinum coins for general circulation, and even then, they weren't generally circulated that much. And it was only, I think that was the only emperor that had issued them at all. They weren't issued at the time of the Russian Revolution, but South Africa has platinum too. But palladium seems to be a more of a Russian game than anything else. And so the price went down today. I don't know where it's going to go. But let me just show you one more chart, and then we'll get to your comments on palladium trading. It's the same thing as gold, silver. Probably more so here because the owners per ounce, well, they call it owners per ounce, but it's actually, you look at the bottom right, what we're talking about here is how many contracts are out there versus what's the notional value of the contract versus how much actual palladium they have in the vault to cover those contracts if indeed they needed to be delivery taken on those contracts. And you can see here it's at 64 to 1. Now, I've shown you before, the silver is not that bad at all because there's 300 million ounces in the COMEX vaults approximately, of which 145 million are held in the JP Morgan vault, and that makes, I think, the owners per ounce about 4 or 5 to 1, which is really very low and nowhere near. Everyone says, "Oh, they're going to stand for delivery." No, not really. There's actually a much higher ratio on actual dollar bills in your bank. They don't have anywhere near the amount of dollars in a particular bank or branch to cover all the deposits that are on account there. And as we mentioned, this trading that happens in gold, silver, platinum, palladium on the COMEX, 95, 99% of the contracts, they're there just to either hedge to get or to get exposure to price. They're looking to make profits or to hedge losses on the physical metal. They're not most instances looking to take delivery. So the idea that the COMEX is going to collapse on silver is ridiculous. People who want to buy gold or silver, any other precious metals, generally will just go out and buy it. And again, even if you get to the point where you can't get delivery from your contract, well, you get your fiat profit. It doesn't mean that there's no gold or silver to be found. It just might mean, it's not the case now, but if somehow there wasn't gold or silver in the vaults available at the time when you wanted to cash in your contract, you take the cash and you go to a broker and you buy yourself the gold for the price. It's not like they're going to make a point. We're going to collapse the COMEX and it's going to be game over and game changer. I've done a long YouTube and blog post on this, on why COMEX is not going to default. I think you just look up why COMEX won't default to Smaulgld and you'll see it. All right, let's see what you guys are saying, but that's it for Palladium today. We're going to have to see after hours. It's down another $6, so it looks like it might stabilize at this area or in this region. Don't forget, we are now on... That's the worst when you have the phone tied to the speaker. Don't forget, we are now on Subscribestar, Smaulgld's Mug Stacker Clubs. You can donate there on a monthly basis if you prefer to donate not via Patreon, but if you want to use Patreon, that's still up and running. If you want to use PayPal to donate, that's still up. If you want to send checks or precious metals, you can still do that by sending them to P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire. I do appreciate all this. I hate having to go through all this, but I've always been told if you don't ask, you don't get, and it's true. I think I was doing this for 3 years and never asked, never got anything. Or you can help Smaulgld by buying a Smaulgld mug, classic or super classic mug. We also have the This Guy mugs. Just go to smaulgld.com. You've got all your options there. Or you can donate Bitcoin or Litecoin. All you got to do is if you have a Bitcoin wallet or a Litecoin wallet is just hold up your phone to those QR codes that you see, and you can make your donation that way. You can make a one-time donation via PayPal. I do want to thank everyone for that. And also, I do want to thank people who are buying their precious metals through the links. It's not investment advice to buy precious metals, but we have affiliate links from SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, and Golden Eagle Coins. And if you buy through those links, you pay no more nor less than if you visited those sites directly. So if you do visit them and you make your purchase, I get a small commission. Now, it's not based on, some people were, I don't know if they were doing this for me, but made some very big purchases, $20,000, $30,000. I get $20, but I get that even if you buy $300 worth. So don't base your buying habits on whether Smaulgld gets a commission. It's just buy what you're going to buy or don't buy what you're not going to buy. But if you do buy, I do get a commission. That does help the site out. All right, let's see the comments that we may have over here. If you got any questions. Long on mugs. All right. Yeah, Carl was asking me to do a Paul Dooley impersonation tonight. I had to tell him I didn't know what it was, but he filled me in on who it is. All right, Pablo is here. Ann is here. Who else have we got? Coins AZ is here. Hello, good evening. Welcome, Smaulgld, mug changers and game changers and mug stackers. Yep, what else? De La Villa's also here. Seth Shepard is here. Maple Hedgehog is here. Palladium pounding. Yes, indeed it was. All right, Fiona is here. Your ears must be ringing. We used your comment earlier on. Financial empowerment movement. Of all the pumpers, Silver Fortune is a good guy. I don't mind listening to him, but I do sometimes laugh. Good intention, though. Yeah, I talk a lot with him, with Matt. Good guy. I think what a lot of people, they just grow up with it, and they don't want to, what's the word, go astray, off the reservation. They've been hearing the answer to the world's problems is silver or gold, and there's enough channels out there repeating that, and kind of makes sense to you, so you listen to it, and then you try to make it your own, and you talk about this is going to happen. But Matt has a good grasp on things. So does Salivate Metal, James Henry Anderson, and SD Bullion. You can tell the ones that I like to talk to, they understand. Like me, they're fans of the precious metals. I come off sometimes much more than they do as bashing them, because not the three individuals, but the metals, because what I'm really doing is bashing the narratives that these guys, not those three guys, that they pump all the time. And they're not, I think that Matt and Salivate Metal and James Henry Anderson do a fairly objective job. No one's 100% objective. And remember, Salivate Metal, that's what he covers, Salivate Metal. Matt is Silver Fortune, and James Henry Anderson works for SD Bullion. So obviously they're going to be pro metals, but they don't go around saying that they're going to solve the world and it's going to be game over and game changer. And all right, what else do we have? Yes, there's a good point, Seth. Yes, Silver Fortune reminds me 9 years ago when I first got into silver. It is very, it's a compelling story when you first hear it. Just like, and if you're inclined to believe it and you think, wow, I've seen these things, the debt's unsustainable, all true. And then you think, wow, finally someone who knows what they're talking about, they're pumping silver, and then you become a silver pumper yourself. It's the same thing. You don't like Donald Trump and you hear Russian collusion, like, yeah, I don't like him. The guy, he's got no morals. Of course he's a traitor. And then you just want to believe everything you hear about Russian collusion. And essentially you lose your mind. You get Trump derangement syndrome, silver derangement syndrome, gold derangement syndrome, crypto derangement syndrome. And then you get mad at anybody who disagrees with you and you start calling them names. That's what happens. Ebola and Tesla batteries, that's right. Okay, Trace Young says, Basil defines physical gold as, do you happen to know the technical requirements of physical gold for purposes of an audit? Yeah, I did read them. They're not very technical. I think it has to be unencumbered, and it has to, I think, I don't quite know for sure. I don't want to mislead you, but I'm pretty sure it just has to be solid gold, meaning it's of 999 purity, and then you can count it as like cash. Now, the issue with Basel for me is it's definitely can't hurt. Now, they've known about this for the longest time. It's voluntary anyway, so if you want to include gold, you can now include it. And the only thing I say is that if your bank doesn't meet the capital adequacy requirements, adding gold isn't going to change it. You can switch your entire capital structure from U.S. Treasuries to gold, and it's not. You may think that your bank is now more stable. It's not, because as a practical matter, you still have the same nominal dollar amount in assets, and if they're inadequate in treasuries and cash, well then it doesn't matter that you switched it over to gold. It would have mattered if you switched it to gold and it can only be counted as half, but it doesn't increase your capital adequacy by adding gold. What it does do, and I think it is a positive for gold, is why not have some gold in your tier 1 assets? The reason you wouldn't have a lot of it from a bank's perspective is it does fluctuate more than cash. So you might not want to have a lot of it, but you might want to have, like they say in any portfolio, some insurance hedge. So it might create some additional demand for gold, but I don't know if it's going to be a game changer. 143 Druid, Ripple is bank crypto. That is correct. Centralized issuer. Fiona Williams. Millennials and Whalen is what I confused there. Lewis, millennials don't even buy brands or jewelry, even gaudy engagement rings, which were so popular for several generations. Yes, they don't. I think it's partially because they don't have the means to buy them in general. We're talking very general. You can't talk about a generation. I hate when people talk about the boomers screwed up this country. No, it wasn't the boomers. And the millennials are all dumb. The millennials are lazy when they say those kind of things. They're individuals in each of the groups, and an entire generation didn't screw up. Anyone who is, I don't know, born between 1946 and 1960 or something, whatever it is, they didn't create the debt problem. There's people who did. There are people who have no debt that are boomers. And there are people that are millennials that aren't lazy. It's foolish to speak that way. But when I say millennial, you can say millennials buy this and millennials buy that at a higher percentage as a group or lower percentage as a group than other groups. I have no problem with that. That's demographic. But when you blame an entire, or you ascribe a characteristic on an entire generation, that's pretty moronic. All right. They dress plainly too. And maybe the reason they dress plainly, on average or as a group, they don't all wear the same thing. I'm sure there's millennials who dress very flashily too. But let's say the amount of money they spend on designers may be lower. Designer goods may be lower than Gen X or baby boomers or whoever. It's because they don't have the money to buy them. And it almost becomes self-fulfilling. If you don't have the money, then you learn to be interested in other things. Like, I never collected vintage cars. I would have liked to, but I never had the money to do it. So I don't collect vintage cars. But if I had hundreds of millions of dollars, I would have Lambos and all kinds of stupid cars just because I could buy them. But it's the same thing with any type of item. I don't buy designer clothes. Probably wouldn't buy them anyway, but still, if money were more plentiful, then you buy Armani suits and, you know. Same with homes. If you don't have the money to buy a home, you don't buy a home and you start telling yourself how great it is to rent. When you buy a home and you own a home, you start touting the benefits of home ownership. It's just how it works. All right. Traveling is big. Yep. Well, traveling can be done cheaply. See, that's a form of entertainment you can do. Fiona Whale, Lewis Russell Maddow. I have a little slurring problem here. Got to start drinking. Rachel Maddow is so obsessed with Russia, I started to wonder if she had any connection with Bill Browder. Yeah, I don't know if she's obsessed with Russia. I think she's obsessed with, and I don't know her, so I don't know whether she is actually wound up about Trump and against Trump, and she's using the Russian thing as a vehicle to get at him, or she's actually against Russia and she's obsessed with Russia, or her bosses tell her, this sells. You go on that girl. You go right at him on Russia and don't stop. Now, the interesting thing is, because they weren't able to pivot, they weren't even ready for this. I'm amazed. They did not look like they had a plan B. I guess their plan was, if the Mueller report comes out and says no collusion, well, we're just not going to believe it until we see the report. And they're going to continue to say it's still Russian collusion. It's just that Mueller was shut down or Mueller was compromised by the Russians. So I guess they're not as clever in coming up with a new. Well, the other thing is, it could also be, if you think about it, they have the former head of the CIA, who may be at the beginning of this whole Russian collusion narrative to begin with. He's on, I don't know if it's CNN or MSNBC, he's a paid contributor. And there was this whole thing back in the 70s with Frank Church, with the Mockingbird media, where the CIA would pay media outlets to get their message out. Well, now they hire the CIA and they just repeat whatever the narrative is. So maybe it's not an issue of they don't know what to pivot to. It's that this is the narrative they're supposed to promote, and they're going to continue to promote it. That's why you got Comey saying, I don't know what happened here. And Brennan saying, I'm the former CIA director. I must have got bad information. Well, then you were a bad CIA director, or you may be complicit. Who knows? But they're not asking these questions. They're not saying, hey, Brennan, what's going on here? And what about this Papadopoulos memo? What about, they're not asking those questions. And that leads me to believe there's some type of collusion with them and the government agencies that might have started this. All right. Yeah, Carl says they all pump cryptos because people realize that the silver pump wouldn't happen. That's right. And I see my analysis is, and it's not crypto pumping, is I see them doing that. And I also see Wall Street doing that, because in my mind, Wall Street loves a pump. They did the housing bubble. They did the .com bubble. They've done the everything bubble. They need a new bubble. They need to pivot. And my view is the indications I'm seeing from regulators, Silicon Valley, Wall Street Journal, and investment flows, they want a crypto bubble. I could be wrong. I'm not pumping that as a narrative. I'm presenting that as analysis. All right. Did you all see that reset 2 years ago? Yeah. The idea of the reset, that's another one. Reset. And gold is at the center of a reset. That's just speculation that there's going to be a reset. I like when they tell you fiat currencies last an average of 42.2 years, and this one is long overdue. As if like that means that's going to happen, and that financial systems reset all the time. They reset on an average of 38.6 years, and it is already past that. And therefore, we're going to have a financial reset. And in order to restore confidence, gold will be at the center of it. Fact. No. Speculation. That's all it is. All right. Many people don't want truth. They just want constant reassurance, but that's what they believe is truth. Absolutely. When I hear on the alternative media channel say it all the time is they're trying to shut my channel down because they don't want to hear the truth. No. They're trying to shut your channel down because they don't believe your point of view. It's not that they don't believe that you're promoting truth. They don't like your point of view. And then people say, well, if I don't like what the mainstream media is presenting, and this person is presenting an alternative point of view, well, therefore, since I don't like what the mainstream media is pointing out, the alternative view must be truth. No, that is why Smaulgld is the red pill for the red pilled. You can say, yes, the mainstream media is pushing a narrative. That doesn't mean that the anti-narrative is the truth. All right. It's not that hard to follow. What else? Tucker is a mainstream shill, says Drew. Chuck and Plata. Fair. Too many trained monkeys making predictions. Far too many. Yes, trained monkeys making predictions. People love to hear predictions. Fiona Williams says, Q is another bizarre phenomenon of latter days. So many adult, well-established people are into this hoax. I guess people want to think someone is in control. Yes, the trust the plan. Now, I don't know anything about Q really, but one thing that I do point out that is possible is Q could actually be what they call a psyop. You know, it's always a psyop or shill or disinformation agent or whatever they come up with. But if you think about it, if you wanted patriots and conservatives and whatever to be neutralized, what would you, so they don't take to the streets and they don't demand justice, you invent the mythical Q, and everybody just takes a deep breath and says, yep, it's all going to work out. I don't have to complain. I don't have to vote because Q, the storm is coming. You know, I would think that's a good strategy if you're on the other side. You plant someone in and you make them popular, you give them this mythical status, and everyone just sits back and says, yeah, trust the plan, trust the plan. I don't know. And that's why, that to me, that's not even worth getting into because there's no way of knowing that. But there is a way of at least questioning it. And the last thing I'm going to do is follow something all based on circumstantial evidence and people pumping it, and you see people getting rich off of YouTube channels, interpreting Q, promoting Q. I'm not into that. All right. Carl Joseph DeMarco. Jeez, all the pumpers are like that guy too, like conspiracy theory pumper story clearinghouses. They buy them all. That is true. That is definitely true. All right. Lewis, Art Berman is very skeptical about U.S. being an oil exporter for long. He explains brilliantly in his lectures. Yeah, I've heard, I don't know who Art Berman is, but there have been people saying since 2013 that the shale oil thing is going to collapse. And I have no trouble with people saying something that's going to collapse or is unsustainable. But the only thing I do have to say is that everything is, any form of life is unsustainable. So if I got on here, I can make a true statement. Everybody on this chat is going to die. You're all unsustainable. I don't know. People like to point this stuff out. Unless you see an imminent collapse, you know, shale's already been around now for 10 years. It's already proven to be a big deal. Now, it might collapse, but people like to hear like somehow they're getting some insight that this isn't going to last. This is unsustainable. I don't know. I'm not impressed with that. Unless you can make the idea with like I'd rather be 10 years early than a day late. No, I wouldn't. For 10 years, I'd rather be doing something else. That means you waste a seventh of your life waiting for silver to go higher, or an eighth of your life, or sixth of your life, whatever the average life expectancy is. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, you don't have to sit around waiting for things to collapse or to skyrocket. Coins A to D says, Platinum is more or less interchangeable with Palladium in some technology from what I understand. That's what I understood too, but ASMR people who I think is engaged in some type of work in this field tells me that they're not exactly. I don't know though. All right, what else? Carl Joseph DeMarco, aren't there a couple of countries that do Palladium coins? Yes. This year you can buy Canadian and U.S. Maple Leafs, Canadian Maple Leafs in Palladium and U.S. Silver Eagles in Palladium. Yeah, platinum is mainly for diesel. That's right. And the reason, that's right, Maple Hedgehog, the reason that platinum went down was that they were stopping making the diesel cars. Yeah. Lewis, I've not heard you yet imitate Gerald Celente or Jim Willie. I can do Gerald Celente and I can probably do Jim Willie. I won't do it tonight, but let me think about that one. The White Shoe Boys. That's Gerald Celente. We gotta go get them Russians. All right, Carl Joseph DeMarco. Might happen again. Yeah, Maple Hedgehog. I'm a construction worker, not a scientist. I have no idea. Yeah, but sometimes the people are working with the map, but you're probably not working with platinum and palladium in construction. But yeah, I can do Jim Willie. I will. Jim Corbett, I don't do. I just never even thought that he would be one of interest. All right. Maple Hedgehog. I've always liked platinum. I think because my folks' wedding rings are made of platinum, so that metal's always been part of my associated consciousness of value. That's a very interesting point. Yeah, it's like gold. That's another point I like to make, is that gold is more treasured than silver. The reason the gold-silver ratio was 16-1, 15-1 was because they were primarily used as money, and they're not today. So now there's a different association with gold than there is for silver. There's different industrial use for gold than there is for silver, and so on. Yeah, it's fair to say now you can buy beautiful palladium jewelry on eBay. One thing people don't realize, I've seen them in person. Platinum isn't better looking. Silver is the most reflective. Silver is the best looking gray metal. It's much better looking than platinum or palladium. The only reason people buy platinum or palladium is because it's more expensive, and they could say, "Oh, I got a platinum ring or palladium ring," but you're better off with a cheap silver ring, I think, if just for looks, not for value. But silver is definitely the most reflective. You shine up silver. I used to do that when my parents had a silverware set. You take it out once a year. I think it was Thanksgiving we used to use it. And it was a silver teapot, as I remember. There was a let me see. There was I guess it was a sugar bowl. There was a milk dispenser. There was a couple of big forks. And when you shine that stuff up, after it was like half. It wasn't shiny at all because it was put away for a year and had like brown spots on it. And that stuff would really shine. All right. Let's see. Ron Campbell, just testing the waters here among the mug holders. Yesterday I spent 0.9 Bitcoin for about 2 ounces of AU. What do you think? Good deal. Should have held on to my digital illusion of wealth. Well, that's a tough question. We'll let the mug stackers. Have you purchased any mugs yet, Ron? That's the most important question. Because if you don't have mugs, you don't hold it, you don't own it. Mugs are real wealth. Mugs can never go to zero. Central banks are stacking mugs. That is all you need to know. It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know whether you should have gold or Bitcoin. My opinion, though, is not what to buy, not investment advice, is that gold is gold. Gold is, what's the word? Is, how do I put this? It's the most stable of all of the items on the list. Bitcoin is speculative. Silver is speculative. Gold is somewhat speculative too, because it hasn't held its value the last 4 or 5 years. Now, I would imagine. Well, actually, I did a chart that showed over the last 15 years, if it's still, it definitely holds its value, much more than silver. And everything is speculative. It's just to what degree of it is and what's your risk-reward ratio. Ron, I am sending a small donation. Can't mugs overseas? Well, that's very kind of you. Actually, I don't know where you are, Ron, but you can order mugs through the Zazzle site. I think they do ship overseas. All right, what else do we have? Want to sell mugs? Come back tomorrow night with a good Jim Willie. Yeah, I guess I got to sing for my dinner, Carl, right? I have to be entertaining as well. I can't just give analysis. Got to bring Seamus back. Or do Bernie Sanders more. I sold all but 1 ounce of palladium I owned when palladium was $950 an ounce. I was once part of the 1%, and I own palladium and platinum coins, so I'm waiting for platinum to the moon to sell and convert into some other assets. That's what Coins AZ says to Bernie Sanders. Yes, Philip. Ron, I'm sure Lewis will appreciate that. Yes, I do. Yes, I do indeed. It's nice when you go to the mailbox and you get something. You get like a letter, kind words, and a check, or some worthless fiat. That's always fun. I get the worthless fiat. Philip says, go long and go strong on the mugs. Yes, indeed. Fiona Boyle, Lewis, I'm happy you're citing me. I lost so many friends because of this Russian collusion thing. People think I'm a Russian spy, no joke. It's hard to discuss something with somebody who they just think, oh, you're Russian. They do the Eddie Murphy thing. I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to you. La, la, la. It's unbelievable. But it's the same thing I encountered over at SGT Report. I just explained why the gold-silver ratio is what it is and gave some rationale. Shill, disinformation agent, this guy. They're arguing with reality. And now they're doing the same thing with the Russian collusion. There's got to be Russian collusion. There's got to be something there. Why? Because they were told there was. But they were told there was on what basis? The main basis was they wanted to believe it was true. Not that they saw evidence that it was true. When they say things like, well, Russia's nice to, Trump is nice to Putin. So that means he colluded? It doesn't make much sense. All that means is that Hillary Clinton had the Russian reset button, the red button with the Russian foreign minister. Does that mean, maybe it doesn't mean that she's in collusion with the Russians? What we do know about Hillary Clinton is that I went to Moscow and then I received $500,000 for the Clinton Foundation. Yeah, okay. He received $500,000 for his own speech. I don't know. There's no logic in any of this stuff. It's all you just it's tribal. You get on the side. I'm against Trump. I'm for Trump, and I don't care about reason at all. I don't care about facts. I don't care about analysis. I just want my money. All right. Yeah, so Ron says the same thing. Fiona, I've given up on ever having a good faith conversation, debate about politics, or anything for this reason. But it's not even politics, Ron. It's gold and silver, which should not be emotional. It's cryptocurrency. I have people writing me, you shouldn't be talking about cryptocurrencies on your channel. They're evil. You shouldn't talk about them. You're pumping cryptos. What are you talking about? I mean, they actually believe. There's some people that believe silver versus gold. I mean, they've gone to that extreme where gold is useless and only silver. And then there's people who like gold, and there's people like cryptos that think that gold is useless. They get emotional about it. All right, what else do we have? Smaulgld, please do your Illuminati silver YouTuber impression. Will we tell you the truth about silver? That guy? Yeah, you gotta have the funny music going on in the background. Philip Quinn lost his car keys. Must be Trump and the Russians. Yes. Ken R. So what I got from your SGT interview a few weeks ago, the central banks are paying monetary chicken. I don't know what that means. People can take from what I said what they want. I don't know if I wasn't saying the central banks are playing monetary chicken, but maybe you can expound below. Coins. I have Palladium coins bought long time ago, says Fiona. Can't make myself selling them. My obsession for collecting is taking the best of me, she says. Okay. DB stupid. Boomers like the trade unions. They want the fine benefit package, even if it bankrupts the whole system. Well, that was an interesting. I remember when Lee Iacocca, I think it was, he went to the unions and he said, I got X number of jobs at this price and I got 0 jobs at that price. And I think they took the offers. All right. Silver pounded down 37% in 1980. Yeah. Well, that particular day, it went from 16 to 10. But they had been crushing it since early January. Once it hit 50, they were like, this has got to stop. and they put in the liquidation. It was inevitable it was going to happen. Unfortunately for the Hunt brothers, they own too much of their silver in the form of paper contracts and too much of their silver in the form on margin. They didn't need to do that. They got greedy actually because the difference is it's a long story. But it's really criminal what COMEX did. They just said, yeah, you know what? We can't have it. This is my point. When they say COMEX default, never, ever going to happen. Look what they did to stop that right there. They just shut down the trading. They'll shut down a trader, a group of traders, or the whole damn platform. They're not going to allow the system to collapse. It's just not going to happen. Fiona. First one, let's see. What else? Fiona for years. Semi-precious. I don't know what else. You guys are talking to yourself again, which is fine. Jack says, this channel will suck when silver explodes and it becomes too crowded in here. I don't know why it will suck when silver explodes. We will analyze why silver exploded. I'm not rooting against. See, as people don't understand, I'm not rooting one way or another. I'm not rooting for Bitcoin. I'm not rooting for silver. I'm not rooting for gold. I'm not rooting for any of them. And I'm not detracting from them either. I'm analyzing where they are. People are too used to going on a channel and hearing cheerleading or hearing bashing. There are certain channels that just bash Bitcoin. That's all. They just keep repeating them. So they just bash it. People either want to hear bashing or promoting. Again, analysis is different. Lewis shale was used by the Soviets in the 1950s. They gave up saying it was economically inefficient. That tells you something. No, it doesn't. The Soviet Union was economically inefficient. So the fact that they couldn't make shale efficient doesn't mean anything. Maybe you meant something different. I'm sure you'll let me know, Fiona. Mint Mark SI silver, I own it, yes, but how long would somebody buy a stock that pays no dividends and has a $2 price fluctuation over 10 years? Do you blindly just continue to buy it? A question well worth asking, Mint Mark SI. It's a question worth asking. People actually have said to me, I lost my integrity when I started covering crypto. I think Chris Dwayne actually said that about me. Lose your integrity, meaning if you no longer worship and worship only silver, your integrity is gone. That means you're married to an asset. I mean, you believe that that's the only thing. That's it. That is the answer to this generational debt-based Ponzi scheme. Hey, you keep saying that. Okay. I think there's more to the world than silver. There's more to the world than Bitcoin or anything else. There's a lot of things out there. They all got to have their time in the spotlight as analysis. And I don't have the time to do it all. So I focus on gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, economic, a little bit of real estate, and a little bit of current events. All right, what else do we have here? Carl is gone. All right, good night, Carl. Doc Brown impersonations. Okay, they don't get emotional. I'm a machine. The Maple Hedgehog makes a good point. I don't get emotional about precious metals. He says, I'm dead inside. I'm a machine. Actually, you do need, I mean, as part of being a person, you need emotions. But I don't know. I'm not going to get excited about Bitcoin or silver. That I'm emotional about it. All right, what else? Lewis, did you catch David Morgan's shout out to his video yesterday? No, I didn't. I haven't heard from David. I'd asked him to come on the show. We had a debate, Ron. David and I on Kennedy Financial. It's more of a semantic debate, whether silver is money or not. Yeah, I have good relations with Dave. Prashanti Girl says, Lewis has more integrity than any pumper. Adhering truth, reality, rather than bias is definition of integrity. Hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if I have to criticize, but I don't even view it as criticizing silver to say that the gold-silver ratio is high for a reason. That's not a critique of silver. It's a statement of the reality of where it is and my rationale as to why I think it should be around there. That could change. All right. So Ann just received a free Stellar at Coinbase. Okay. I'll give you that link there. I signed up for it, but I didn't get it. All right, everyone. Well, I want to thank you all again for joining me this evening. It's quite a group, and I'm happy with the size of it. I don't really care if it grows beyond this. There's nothing I can do about it. You have to appeal to the people that like what you're doing, and you guys like what I'm doing, and I like what you're doing, and I like that you're contributing. So thank you very much. And unless I hear from you in 10 seconds, we'll be seeing you. 10. Oh, how close is each metal lineup per production cost on average? Says DB Stupid. I've done that analysis for gold and silver mines. Silver's hard to figure out because of the different. It's hard to tell a silver number when a lot of them, 70% of it is a byproduct, and then primary silver mines are not where you get the primary amount of silver from. Gold, it's close to the cost of production. I don't know about palladium and platinum. Let's see. All right, everyone. Looks like you guys are moving out. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night.